Today, we're diving into a spiritual philosophy that is, well, designed to shake things up. It really challenges our deepest beliefs about what life is for, what good even means, and, what it means to be human in the first place. So let's get right into it. Right off the bat, we get hit with this really jarring statement. I mean, it just completely flies in the face of so many spiritual traditions that talk about detachment and renouncing the world. It's a bold way to start, for sure, and it's the perfect doorway into a pretty radical way of looking at our own existence. So you might be wondering, where on earth do these ideas come from? Well, they're said to be from a channeled spiritual entity. And look, whether you're on board with that or not, the philosophy itself is what's so fascinating. It really does turn a lot of common spiritual beliefs completely upside down. Okay, so for a little background, the source of this whole philosophy is a spiritual master they call Entity A, or Andrea. And these teachings have apparently been channeled through an Italian medium, a guy named Corrado Piancastelli, ever since 1995. The source material actually makes a really interesting point about all this. It basically says the origin of these ideas is way less important than the ideas themselves. The real test is, do they make sense? Do they have the power to make us think differently? So with that in mind, let's just focus on the actual content. And that brings us to the first huge concept, and it's a big one. It's asking us to totally reevaluate why we're even here on Earth. I mean, are we just here to pass some kind of big moral test, or is it something else entirely? This slide really lays out the core difference. The common view, right, often paints Earth as a place to pay for our sins, basically a giant moral exam. But this philosophy just flips that whole idea. It says Earth isn't a courtroom. It's more like a gym, an exercise ground. Your spirit chose to be here to, get its hands dirty and learn what this whole material world is all about firsthand. And check out this analogy they use. It's perfect. Imagine you travel to this amazing exotic country, but you just stay in your hotel room eating food you packed from home. What's the point, right? You might as well have stayed home. Well, the same logic applies here. A spirit, which is an immaterial being, comes to Earth to live a full-on human life, not to try and live like a spirit. That just wouldn't make any sense. So if we're here for the whole human experience, that brings up a really important question. What part of us is actually having it? According to this philosophy, a lot of our confusion about life, death, and everything in between comes from mixing up two very, very different parts of our being. So yeah, what happens when this body is gone? What part of us actually carries on? To answer that, this philosophy makes a critical distinction that honestly changes everything. Okay, here's the absolute core of it. The soul, that's our human personality. Our ego, our memories, all our learned behaviors. It's a temporary construct and this is a really radical idea, is subject to death. The spirit, on the other hand, is our true essential self. It's described as an eternal electric structure, the core signal that is us, that exists long before we're born and long after we die. This idea of superstructures is totally key to understanding the soul. Just think of them as all the scaffolding we build around our core self, all the cultural rules, the social norms, the habits you've picked up that you think of as you. According to this philosophy, that entire structure, it's temporary. It gets shed after death. And get this, the philosophy claims that a full 90% of what we think of as our personality is just this collection of temporary, fake superstructures. I mean, what does that even mean? It suggests that our true, authentic self, the spirit, is actually this much smaller, simpler core that's kind of buried underneath all the stuff we call me. So that brings us to what is maybe the most challenging idea in this whole thing. If life is a gym, an exercise ground, then what's the deal with pain and suffering? We're so often taught to see it as a punishment, something to be avoided at all costs. But this philosophy, it has a radically different take. The key idea here is that pain isn't some kind of cosmic penalty. It's just an inevitable part of living a full life. It's part of the experience the spirit actually came here to understand. In fact, this philosophy suggests that pain, when we process it the right way, becomes a kind of food for the spirit. It provides a type of knowledge that you just can't get any other way. So how do you actually turn pain into knowledge? Well, this slide breaks down a pretty fascinating 5-step process. It's not about just passively suffering through something. It's about active, intelligent acceptance. It says you face it with reason, you understand why it's important for the spirit, and you accept it with full awareness. When you do that, the experience is basically digested. The spirit gets the knowledge it was after, and the psychic pain goes away because its job is done. It's a really powerful way to think about transforming hardship. All right, so our final section builds on everything we've talked about and leads to a truly provocative conclusion. This philosophy completely reframes our inner moral struggles, not as a fight between good and evil, but as a conflict between two very different inner voices. So check this out. This slide completely redefines our inner world. The voice of rules, that inner critic that's always pushing you to follow social conditioning, is presented as the real source of guilt and anxiety. And the voice of temptation? Well, that's framed as your true spirit, trying to push you to break the very rules that are holding it back from having the experiences it came here for in the first place. And this quote just lands the punch perfectly. It's saying that what we've been taught to call the devil of temptation might actually be our most authentic self, our spirit fighting against the conditioning that's keeping it from its purpose. It's a total paradigm shift. So if we boil this all down, what are the core takeaways? First, live intensely. Your spirit is here for the full-throttle human experience, so don't back away from it. Second, experience is knowledge. And that's especially true for the hard stuff. And third, acceptance is freedom. When you intelligently and consciously accept an experience, you transform its pain into wisdom and you become free. And that leaves us with one final, very personal question. If there's any truth to this, if your life is a kind of curriculum that your own spirit designed for itself, what's the lesson on the syllabus for you right now? What is your spirit trying to learn through the life that you are living today?